Bob Mueller's final word. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, as we record this, we are just minutes away from Robert Mueller's final statement as special counsel investigating Russian involvement in the 2016 election and the possibility that President Trump or associates of President Trump may have obstructed justice during the process of the FBI, the special counsel, and Congress investigating. Robert Mueller was very clear, Bill, in saying that his report is his testimony. So if Congress calls him to testify, he's not going to say anything more than he's already said. He's also very clear in saying that all the conclusions are in the report, that there's no evidence that's being held back, that the public is already aware of everything that happens. But Bill, he also left a very big door open. Some might even call it a smoking gun, because he didn't say that the president had anything to do with interfering in the election or that anybody on his team did, other than those people have already been charged in various ways for essentially lying. What he did say, however, was that the special counsel could not charge President Trump with crimes because the Department of Justice has considered for years that it would be unconstitutional to charge a sitting president with a crime. He also said that if he knew that the president had not committed any crimes with regard to obstruction, that he would have declared that as well, but he did not. He also said that he gathered all the information and at a time when witnesses' memories were fresh and documents were available, and that body of work is now available. Essentially, Bill, it sounded like he was saying this isn't a criminal process, it's a political one. Here you go, boys.
If his entire conclusion, well, certainly this is the assumption you are led to make listening to what he said. Certainly if you're 50% of the country that's Democrat or voted Democrat, you listen to what he said, and what he's basically saying is, oh yeah, definitely he colluded with Russia, no question about it. It's just we just have decided for years that we would never prosecute a sitting president for crimes in office.
I don't think you'll see that. I think what you'll see is now. Let me clarify, because this is important. I don't think that he is implying that President Trump may have committed some sort of conspiracy with Russia or that anybody in his team did, but he is leaving the door open to say President Trump may have obstructed justice, but because of what you're about to say, he could not charge him with the crime because it would be unconstitutional to do so.
Okay, so forget collusion, then it's an obstruction of justice issue. Fine. So if it turns out that that Bob Mueller, through the integrity of his office and the Democratic Party, which launched this investigation, understood that whether or not they find anything on Donald Trump, no action would be taken because there's no action taken against a sitting president. I just don't believe that. What I think he's trying to do is put the best possible spin on a 2.5-year failure, and it's a shameful thing he's doing, Scott. It's a really shameful and destructive thing he's doing, because he is not only not allowing this to close, he is intentionally and purposefully keeping it open. So it's like me saying, look, if I falsely accuse somebody of something, murder, let's say, and I convince everybody I know that this guy's a murderer, and I'm the prosecutor, and I say, boy, don't you worry, he's definitely a murderer. And then we go to trial, and it turns out that I don't have any evidence that this guy murdered the person in question at all. And then my statement after losing the case is to say, yeah, but we still don't really know what happened, on Tuesday night at 9:00. We never were able to find that out.
Well, he's not exactly saying we don't know what happened, although he does indicate that people in the Trump administration, including the president himself, obscured information, restricted documents, and things like that.
But see, what we're doing now is we're parsing the boundaries of what he said. But from what you read to me, it is crystal clear to me what he's saying. He's saying that there's a bunch of things he did that are criminal that we just simply couldn't get him on. I mean, that's clearly the impression that he's leaving here.
You can draw that inference from it, but I don't think that Mueller was implying that.
What other inference would you draw?
What he's saying was, and he was very plain with his language. The whole statement took less than 10 minutes. It started with his resignation. Of course, his office the work is done. And he ended with basically saying, look, if a foreign government interfered with U.S. elections, which is clear that they did in a systematic way, that's a problem that everybody should be concerned about. But regarding President Trump and the specific obstruction issue, he basically said, I can't tell you that he did not obstruct. However, I can also tell you that I'm not able to bring charges. It would be unconstitutional for me to bring charges. So all I could do was gather evidence. And I think that's a different thing from what you're saying.
No, it's not. What he's saying is, what that statement says, and certainly what it is intended to sound like is, I couldn't bring charges because it's unconstitutional. But the fact that I couldn't bring charges doesn't mean that no crime was committed. In other words, what he's saying is, yes, Donald Trump did it, but I'm not able to prove it, and so therefore I'm going home.
Well, Bill, your whole argument rests on this sort of bad actor theory about Bob Mueller, that basically a guy who was appointed and served under two different political parties' administrations is somehow part of some deep state conspiracy who's trying to bring down President Trump.
Yeah, that's right.
And the evidence to support that is what?
Well, the evidence to support that is, first of all, that if you look at the political connections of Mueller historically, he goes right back into the same camp with the Clintons and Comey and Brennan and all the rest of them. So while it's guilt by association, and that's not proof, it is nevertheless, let's just say, of interest to people like me. If Bob Mueller had any shred of actual integrity or patriotism, he would have said something along the lines of this. As a conclusion to my report, we found no evidence that the president colluded with the Russians, or no evidence of obstruction of justice that met the standards of criminal behavior. That's an entirely different statement than what he made.
But when the standard is that you can't charge a sitting president,
well,
then how can you make a statement like that?
Then why have the investigation in the first place?
Because he was charged to do so by the Department of Justice.
So he was charged to do so by the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice could then do what?
The primary evidence they were
that it's unconstitutional to charge a sitting president. I'm old enough to remember Richard Nixon, who, as I recall, was a sitting president, being forced to resign because if he hadn't been forced to resign, that basically the consequences of his actions we're going to have him ejected from office.
Yes, that's impeachment, and that's a different matter, and that's a political act, not a criminal act.
So Mueller, I think, has an obligation to say that under our system of the presumption of innocence, since we cannot prove he's guilty, he is therefore not guilty. He doesn't have to say innocent, because innocent and not guilty are not the same things. But he could have basically said, look, we've looked at it from a legal perspective, and as far as legally is concerned, Donald Trump is not guilty. For him to say that the Constitution is protecting him, let's just cut through all this bull, okay? What he's doing is he is giving the progressive left a big hand signal that says, "Oh yeah, of course he did it. We just couldn't bring it because of that stupid Constitution. Of course he did it, and it's irresponsible, and it's divisive, and it's dishonorable, and all the other things I would come to expect from the Democratic Party." What would have been an interesting thing for Mueller to say would have said something like, well, after 2.5 years of casting aspersion on President Trump, at least not through me, but through the number of people who were talking about my report casting aspersion on Donald Trump, having found no evidence of collusion or any criminal evidence of obstruction, I would like to personally apologize to the president for whatever damage this may have caused. That would be an interesting statement.
Well, that would be a statement based on the assumption that the reason why he was the special counsel was because he was out to nail the president, not that he was an objective actor in a process of gathering information.
Well, Scott, the great thing about you, and the reason you're so superb at this, and give me a chance to shine a little bit, is because you're very, very good at playing devil's advocate. But we all know the overstory. We know the plot. Right? We may not remember all of the dialogue, but we know the plot. And the plot is this. Barack Obama had basically weaponized the government against the United States citizens by his control of the Justice Department. And once he controlled the Justice Department, it didn't matter whether the IRS was doing something illegal or the FBI or NSA or anything else. If the Justice Department is under your control, then it's just a question of saying we're just not going to prosecute. And it's like Eric Holder saying, well, we're not going to prosecute these Black Panthers because I'm not going to do that to my people. If you own the Justice Department, you can get away with anything. So Barack Obama basically put the conditions in place for people like Comey and Brennan and all the rest to act as if they were never going to lose again. Well, they did lose. And now all of a sudden, the legal structure of the country is not in their hands. And there's a president who is not one of their trusted circle. And so you're left with, what do you do on the first Wednesday of November if you're all of these people that have been running a criminal conspiracy? And Hillary Clinton is selling all this uranium to Russia and all this. Now, all of a sudden, the one thing that could not happen was impossible, simply impossible, that this buffoon Donald Trump, who's not an insider like Jeb Bush, who would undoubtedly have done the comedy thing, I guess. No. So what they did starting on Wednesday morning after the election was they decided that they could get a twofer out of this. If they were to accuse Donald Trump of the things that Hillary Clinton actually did, then they would deflect attention away from Hillary Clinton. They would inoculate her against charges of colluding with the Russians, because then it would just be kind of like a tit for tat kind of, no, you hit me, no, you quit. So there would be that. They would take up a couple years of time, which was really a very important thing for them, to destroy Donald Trump's credibility, not only among the press and themselves, which never existed anyway.
And all this time, Robert Mueller was lying in wait, the hand-picked servant of this cabal of people in the Democratic Party who were corrupting the system of justice?
Mueller wasn't so much lying in wait as Mueller was the best available tool. And you make it sound like it's such a harebrained thing, you know? You make it sound like, geez, well, where are you pulling this out of? So I'll tell you where this conclusion comes from. As far as this, what I don't remember exactly what your terms were about this, criminal conspiracy on the part of the government. When the director of the FBI issues a 45-minute indictment of Hillary Clinton, crime by crime by crime, felony by felony by felony, and then says, well, we don't recommend, no rational, reasonable prosecutor would take the case. That's evidence. That's crystal clear evidence that there's something fishy going on. When Loretta Lynch meets with Bill Clinton on an airplane tarmac for 20 minutes, just a day or two before this thing happens, and has the audacity, which, by the way, forget about what they said. It is unseemly, and it is unprofessional, and it is clearly immoral for these two people to be talking at all, and for them to tell the American people, oh, Bill and I we just talked about our grandchildren. The fact that Hillary's the report on Hillary that my FBI is about to issue to your wife, former Secretary of State and Democratic frontrunner. There's no reason even to chat about that, Bill. We'll just talk about our grandkids, why don't we? This is evidence of them lying to our faces in front of us on camera, and certainly Hillary Clinton's lies on camera about everything are crystal clear. So I'm not inventing this idea.
I'm not saying you're inventing it, Bill. I'm just saying that all this backstory somehow has to connect the dots to a man whose final public act is going to be to issue a report based on a 2.5-year investigation that he oversaw, and the assumption is that in some way, the whole process is corrupted, and he's actually sort of winking at his progressive buddies and saying, okay, now I've set the table for you to go after President Trump, which you know was the purpose of my appointment the whole time.
He's not set the table for them to go after him. I think legally,
and in the impeachment sense.
Not just in impeachment sense, in terms of, did Donald Trump commit any actionable crimes? It's over. That ship has sailed. And so
only with regard to the conspiracy.
Hold on. So you're telling me that Mueller went into this knowing that Donald Trump was not guilty?
No, I'm saying he went into this as an objective person to analyze the evidence.
So here's a guy who's an associate of Hillary Clinton's. He's selected to run this investigation. He runs this investigation for 2.5 years, and he comes up with nothing. So that's not to say that he knew he was going to come up with nothing. Of course he didn't. I'm sure he thought he was going to get orchards of material. But when he came back with nothing, he could have said, We looked into it and there was nothing. But that's not what he said. That's not what he said. When you say he left the door open, it's not that he left the door open for further legal proceedings or further investigations. He left the door open for the slander that started this whole thing in the first place, which was instigated by James Comey and Hillary Clinton and all the rest. It's not speculation. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's actual fact. And you look at the connection between these people and how far back they go. And you've got a person like Hillary Clinton who from the evidence of watching her lie about the email server and Benghazi and all the rest, watching her lie in front of our faces, utterly convinces any rational person this person will do anything. And so now Hillary Clinton is launched a 2.5 year preemptive attack in order to stop the investigation that's coming for them. And now that the investigation is coming, and now that this sideshow has disappeared, some interesting answers are going to come out of this. But the main point is, Scott, is that what he said was unprofessional. It was irrelevant. It was un-American, and it was divisive. And the reason I say that
is saying what Mueller said. Mueller said,
because when you read the sentence to me, I had no problem at all, none, understanding what he was saying to progressives and Democrats across the country.
Now, I want to make clear that I didn't read any sentence to you. What I was giving you was my recollection of the press conference that I just witnessed. So I don't want to attribute words specifically to him. But I'm giving you a summary of events.
That is the event that happened, and for him to do this is just another indication of the fact that the man is not fundamentally honest or honorable, because an honest and honorable person who was actually trying to seek the truth for the good of the republic, independent of any kind of political motivation, would have come out and said, ladies and gentlemen, our system works. It works because we have the presumption of innocence. Donald Trump doesn't have to prove he didn't do any of these things. It's up to me to find evidence that he did do any of these things. And after 2.5 years, we found no evidence that we could consider criminal activity on the part of Donald Trump. Therefore, under the system of law that we have in the United States that protects each and every one of us, including the President of the United States, we have to find Donald Trump not guilty in the legal sense of the term, that we could not find any evidence to convict him. And that's what an honest person would have done. But that would have been an honest person and not a hack who's been at this and dropping hints and who probably knew, I would be willing to bet you, probably knew within the first 3, 4, 5 months of the 2-year investigation that all of this stuff was nonsense. And Scott, don't tell me that you're saying that Robert Mueller didn't. I'm not saying he knew in advance, but don't tell me that you don't know that as the investigation began, Robert Mueller was unaware of the fact that the entire thing was set in motion based on a dossier that Hillary Clinton had paid a foreigner to assemble on Donald Trump, which had no corroborative evidence.
Well, Bill, but the majority of what you're dwelling on here is actually the thing that Mueller has effectively cleared the president of, which is the idea that somehow the Trump campaign conspired with the Russians to affect or influence the 2016 election. Look, we're kind of running out of time here. Let me give you one more thing, and this is probably the most.
But that is not the conclusion. Maybe that's his conclusion on the collusion, but that's not his conclusion on
the obstruction.
On the obstruction, which is why this is a story, because he left open a door that he, by every legal measure of integrity, should have closed with an explanation of how our system works.
Well, here's another reason why he didn't close the door. And this is really the second reason he gave. And again, I'm characterizing things here. You want to read the statement for yourself, ladies and gentlemen who are watching this. He said that it would be unfair to accuse someone of a crime when there is no court to adjudicate that. And what he meant was, because the president cannot be charged and therefore cannot be in a criminal proceeding in a court, bringing a charge against him would be unfair to the president himself because he would have no way to defend himself.
See, look, I'm a writer and words are my profession. And when you're a lawyer, words are also your profession, and the words you use are very, very, very important. Very important. So, Could you read that last sentence again? And I'll tell you what Mueller has done, which I think is immoral and reprehensible, and it's all in that last sentence. Could you just
Again,
read it again?
it's my summary,
Okay, your summary,
of my
but your
recollection of what I
summary.
see.
So your summary was saying that
Basically that Mueller said that it would be unfair to accuse anyone, including the president in this case, of a crime when there was no court to adjudicate that case.
Okay, that's the pin. It would be unfair to accuse him because there's no court that could try him is a completely different thing than to say it is unfair to accuse him because we found no evidence of criminal activity.
Well, he didn't say we found no evidence of obstruction.
No. This is not a joke. This is what he's doing. He's couching his language in a very specific way. He could have come out and said that we have no actionable legal evidence that Donald Trump did anything wrong, but that's not what he said. He didn't say that. He said, well, we have to be fair to Donald Trump. There's no court that convict him. He could have had bloody red hands and the entrails of all five of Jack the Ripper's victims in a trail behind him. But because he's the president, there's no court that convict him. So I'm afraid we have to let him go. I'm not immune to this kind of rhetoric. As a matter of fact, I think I am exceedingly highly tuned to this kind of prestidigitation. This kind of thing, this kind of language that basically subverts the conclusion of his report while maintaining a standard of we didn't find anything. So in conclusion to this long segment, what happened basically is this. We had an investigation. We all know Trump did it, but the investigation was launched under illegal and immoral purposes. Put that aside. We investigated Donald Trump for 2.5 years. And now after it's over, I am here to report to the American people that we cannot find a court to try Donald Trump in, therefore we have to let him go. That is not the same thing as saying to the American people, after 2 years of investigation, we found no evidence of illegal activity in terms of collusion or obstruction of justice on the part of Donald Trump. And that is why this man is a low-life traitor, because he understands the power. And when I call him a traitor, I mean he is a traitor to the entire idea. I'm not talking about a traitor to Donald Trump. That's irrelevant to me. That's politics. I don't care about that. When I say he's a traitor to the entire idea of the American system of justice, which he could have simply stated as the reason why there are no charges against Donald Trump. But he didn't do that. He used language in such a way to insinuate that simply insinuate, as I've said, well, we looked into it for 2.5 years and constitutionally, we're not allowed to charge the president, so we're just going to have to end the investigation. That is a low, misleading, deceitful, cowardly political position to take, and I would love to tell you that it surprised me, and I hope to God for the future of this country that I will live long enough where something like this will happen, and once again I'll be shocked, instead of today when it's like, oh, okay, got it.
Analyzing the news of the day 5 days a week, Bill Whittle now comes to you thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com who contribute monthly and annually to the sustenance of this enterprise. They make it possible for us to produce these shows and also to produce an exclusive members-only website where the members write their own blog and communicate in other ways with each other. It's an active society of liberty for mutual encouragement, reason, thought, and civil dialogue, and we invite you to become part of it. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.